Good day and welcome to SCO BRICS Insight, where we look at what's really going on in the world of the BRICS. Now today I want to talk about living standards in the US, G7, EU, which are the complete reverse of the situation in a number of the BRICS countries, particularly Russia, China and India, where over the last 30 years living standards have grown to levels that were never dreamed about, particularly in Russia during the period of the Soviet Union. Now, it's been traditional in the West over the last century or so that each generation is better off than the previous ones. Your parents are wealthier, healthier and better educated than their parents were, and this has been expected that it would continue. However, for the first time in 70 years in countries of the G7, EU, US, particularly in Europe, the younger generations are experiencing a decline in their quality of life and their standard of living compared to their predecessors. Now, the global economy is now facing significant challenges, including inflation, unemployment and an energy crisis. The availability of food products is a significant concern around the world in Europe, Latin America, Africa and Asia. And it's a prominent topic amongst politicians and their conversations. Now, to what extent are the global crises and sanctions against Russia linked to the problems that are currently facing this Western-centric societies? Now, the issue of high living costs is a significant concern for people in Europe and the US, outweighing other sociological issues. This is data put together by the Expert Institute of Social Research called the report, The World Crisis of Cost of Living. Now, the following are key features. Experts have indicated that the cost of living has risen considerably in recent times, largely as a result of financial crises. The rise in food prices has prompted many consumers to switch to buying own brand food, special offers and reducing the quality and variety of items in their baskets that they're purchasing at the supermarket. In some countries such as France and the UK, the impact has been felt by more than half the population. For example, it's estimated that up to 20% of the families in the UK suffer from food provision insecurity and poverty and visit food banks. Now, there's a notable concern about inflation in all the economically developed countries, 63% in Singapore, 50% in Australia and the United States. See, inflation is the biggest problem that faces them now. For the United States, inflation and the dire state of the economy are the major things that they voted for in the presidential elections. They thought Trump would be better than Biden. In some countries such as the UK, rising cost of utilities, including gas and electricity, are placing significant pressure on millions of families, which push them into poverty. Somewhere between 1/3 and half of respondents in Europe worry about their ability to pay their what they regard as unreasonably high utility bills. I mean, the figures are 59% in Britain, 50% in France, 49% in Germany, 30% in Denmark, 29% in Sweden and 62% in Italy. Now, before I continue, I'd like to make an appeal. If you like and enjoy my videos, you can help me fund the channel and my website scobricsinsight.com to further develop it, and you can do this by making a small donation, which can be done by clicking on the thanks button at the bottom of the video screen. Everybody who donates does get a personal thank you from me, and I'm thanking you all now. Now, a significant proportion of respondents in the European countries encounter significant challenges in just affording petrol for their vehicles. We only have to remember the yellow vest or the gilet jaune in France to see that that was a problem. In the UK, many are complaining about reports of that. I mean, Germany, Denmark and Sweden are all facing factors where they find fuel and energy costs are basically out of control. The US is also facing medical expenses and outstanding medical debt. Due to the high cost of medical care and insurance, over 1/3 of US residents have serious medical debts that they have trouble paying off. It's estimated that 40 million Americans owe $88 billion in medical debt. Now, the issue of credit card debt has also become a significant concern, with if people just managing to pay the interest every month and nothing off the capital of the bill that they owe. I mean, in the US, for example, the collective debt for student loans is 1.7 trillion. So economic challenges are felt in countries that historically enjoyed a security position and major growth. That was the first world. They were obviously the developed nations and they had a higher standard of living. Now, it's the first time since World War II, new generations are having a lower standard of living compared with their parents. Now, this is going to have serious political consequences, but it's an illustration of the fact that globalization has mostly negative implications. I mean, so what are the implications of this cost of living crisis? I mean, these crises are not limited to a rise in prices in all the major spending categories. There's a lot more than that. I mean, it's a reduction in access for entire groups to goods and services, including social ones. I mean, the relocation of manufacturing from the EU and the US to China caused a lot of problems, particularly in the US with the Rust Belt, etc. And now the relocation from Europe to China and to the US because of cheaper energy cost is also causing serious problems across Europe, particularly in Germany. I mean, the price of gas in Europe is almost 5 times higher than in the US, and it's about the same as much lower in China. Companies get benefits from both countries for relocating, and they get the products they want. Now, economic growth is leading or lack of economic growth is leaving the European economies facing serious challenges. Germany's in recession for the second year in a row, and that's the first time for decades. And that's a problem given that Germany's status is allegedly the key economy of the European Union. Now, obviously, the hastened energy transition to so-called renewables, which has really taken place without a lot of actual thought and consideration into the technical and economic problems that was going to cause. So that's really the big thing is energy. You can't go green without going broke. It's a bit like woke and broke, green and mean. And that obviously, Europe was built, and most of its prosperity was built on energy from Russia, cheap energy and commodities, whether it be steel, aluminium, iron ore, oil, gas, etc. So the conditions in Europe are less favourable than they are in US or in China, who have no problems with energy and costs and manufacturing, etc. So it's obvious that this is really a problem, and it was exacerbated by the anti-Russian sanctions. Getting rid of everything from Russia because of what happened in the Ukraine was just economic suicide, and it was encouraged by the US rather than the EU themselves. They just followed on, and of course that's now meant that, you know, large amounts of poverty are happening in the European Union and the United Kingdom, which is no longer part of it. Now, if only they actually realised that renewables are anything but, and gas, nuclear, and are really the most reliable forms of energy for manufacturing, and forget this transition to the so-called renewables and following these stupid green dreams of the politicians, and get back to what really works for the European people. I mean, at the end of the day, the United States has taken advantage of everything that's happened over the last 20 years, but particularly the last 10. I mean, it's forced the European Union into economic suicide, and it's encouraged the expansion of the Union, plus into NATO, for countries that have no contribution economically, and it's made Europe economic uncompetitiveness, and it's fragmented it. I mean, the US has actually effectively destroyed the European Union and the European continent and its sectors and industries. And as Henry Kissinger said, it's far more dangerous to be a friend of the United States than it is an enemy. So all the following living standards are all because you kicked out Russia from your portfolio of buying energy, commodities, etc. So anyway, that's my perspective. Hope you've enjoyed it. I'll see you all again soon. Please like, share and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. And if you want to make a contribution, click on the thanks button. Thank you.